Warning. This video is a message. I'm only a messenger. I am not responsible for the anger you might feel upon watching this video, and I am not responsible for the anger that you'll feel upon realizing what has been taken from you. I am not responsible for the fact that you've been lied to or robbed. I am only responsible for telling you that it is happening. You and only you are responsible for what you do with this information. The content in this video might be disturbing for some people. Adult language is used. Viewer discretion is advised. It's as if a huge group of powerful people sat down in a cold, dark room, smoking expensive stogies, coming up with clever ways to rule the world. One of them suggested that they just find several ways to make the population of people just so dumbed down that they'll accept any idea, no matter how terrible, no matter how deleterious. If people were just stupid enough, we could probably convince them to sterilize themselves, starve themselves on a vegan diet, spend all their money, decimate their family empire, and live alone in a cardboard box. And all while being proud and perhaps even happy to have the privilege to do so. And then another stogie-smoking, power-hungry asshole says, "No, we don't need to dumb them down. Why would we need to? We could just make the ideas so appealing that everyone will want to join in. And if we can't make those ideas appealing, well, we'll just guilt them into it through, I don't know, environmentalism or economics." And then the biggest jerk of them all interrupts and says, "I have a better idea. Let's do both. For the most profit possible, all families should be demolished. So let's create a society that's not only weak, malnourished, sick, poor, and vulnerable, but let's also make them so fucking dumb that they beg for these very things." And thus, the vegan movement, the feminist movement, the animal rights movement, the tiny house movement, the environmentalist movement were all created in one fell swoop. Hey everybody, it's Daphne Rimmel, your flat earth nurse, and on this channel I talk a lot about how veganism weakens people, weakens their body, their lives, their families, their social circles, their sex drive, their legacy. But veganism goes hand in hand with environmentalism, which is actually here to do the same kind of damage. And in this video, I would like to talk about the tiny house movement, which is fueled by the environmentalism movement. The tiny house philosophy was created by the government to trap folks who have an anti-authority mindset into a situation where they are weaker and more vulnerable than ever, all under the guise that if they do this, they could, save some money on their car insurance, save some money on their bills, not have to heat a big house, save so much money not having to heat that big house, ha ha ha. The government actually creates a lot of these trap philosophies, and people rarely see it. I spend a lot of my time trying to expose it, but seldom do people see what's really happening. With veganism, anyone with a fully functioning brain and the internet can see that it's a philosophy created to harness the good intentions of good people and redirect it straight toward hell. You ever hear that saying that the road to hell is paved with good intentions? Yep, you can thank these insidious ideologies for that. It goes like this. Your first governments that you're ever aware of are your parents in school. And they tell you that if you want to amount to shit, you're going to have to get a college education. So, you go into debt for a piece of paper or two. The government says the world's overpopulated, so you get a vasectomy. The government says plastic straws are bad, so you stop using the plastic straws. The government says it would be easier on the environment if you lived in a tiny little plastic shack called a tiny house, so you move into a plastic shack. The government says it's better for the Amazon rainforest and for the environment if you don't eat beef, so instead you get yourself some soy patties. The government says it's bad on the environment for you to burn wood in your wood-burning fireplace or your wood-burning stove, so you accommodate them in any way that you can. Go ahead and get yourself an eco-friendly heater. And there you sit. A biological and genetic fucking failure. A dead end. No family dynasty. No family at all, no way to make one, no real energy, a weaker body, mountains of debt, no fireplace, no real power, no real protection. There you sit, vulnerable to anyone and anything. There you sit, with your soy patty, surviving in a plastic shack sold to you by the very people who said you should go to hell for using a plastic straw. And there we have it. Tip of the iceberg. You can see what's going on here. And that's some serious environmentalistic logic for you right there. Plastic straw, bad. Plastic house, good. And you have exchanged all of that for a real life. Eating a real steak by a real fire, burning real wood, in a real house made of real stones, surrounded by your real family. But think about this. What if you were under attack by anything? Could be an actual war, boogeyman, mad murderer, escaped convicts, the mob, someone who wants to rob or kill you. Where would you rather be? A stone fortress on a mountain or a polyfill vinyl siding tiny house parked down on Doofus Street? Think about this. A storm is coming. Really big fucking storm. Could rain for 4 days. Then it rained for 6. A tornado is coming. Hurricane is coming. Snowstorm is coming. A tsunami is headed right for the beach on which you keep your blue van you call home. Wouldn't it be nice to retreat to a castle? A fortress? Something, sturdy enough to provide protection? And this, my friends, is where shit starts to get really interesting. I started examining the lies told to us by the environmentalists and the tiny house people. Whew, and honey, it has led me to some dark places. The tiny house movement is based on one huge fucking lie, and in this video I intend to expose it in its entirety. I do not want them being able to weasel their way out of ever having said this lie. I will make them take full responsibility for it. I will see to it. So lean in closely, because this is a lie that I don't want you to ever fucking forget. The tiny house people in the tiny house documentary and the tiny house movement all exclaim that we are living in bigger houses than we have ever lived in. They say that we need to downsize, that we have too much stuff, that we have more stuff than we've ever had, that our houses used to be smaller, more practical, and that if we want to save money, we need to just stop living in these really rare big houses that we never lived in before. But the truth is actually that our ancestors ate meat and lived in the biggest, baddest, strongest structures they could build, find, or take over. Our ancestors did not eat soy chicken nuggets and live in trailers. They just fucking didn't. So, how about, for history's sake, we take a look at our ancestors' houses, see what they've lived in throughout the many years, shall we? Okay, tiny house people, it's time for you to have a seat. Exhibit A, the plantation, an estate on which crops grow. A lot of our recent ancestors lived or worked on plantations, and there isn't anything tiny about the house on a plantation. Exhibit B, the Downton Abbey. Many of our ancestors lived in medium to large-sized castles as part of the British social hierarchy. Exhibit C, stone castles and mountain fortresses. When possible, our ancestors chose to build high and strong for the purposes of legacy and protection. Exhibit D, Darren Kuyu. One of many really strange underground structures, this is a stone city built in Turkey that can house an estimated 30,000 people, livestock, and food storage. Exhibit E, Göbekli Tepe. Supposedly 12,000 years old, some of our most ancient ancestors were still choosing to build, live, and gather in stone structures that provided privacy, safety, and room for extended, large families. Exhibit F, Angkor Wat. This is my favorite megalithic stone structure of all time. I could actually make a series of videos on the conspiracies surrounding this magnificent place. Angkor Wat is known as a temple complex, and it exists in Cambodia. It is proclaimed to be the largest religious monument in the world, but that's not exactly what it is. Or, well, that's not exactly what it started out to be. You see, it doesn't really look like a place of worship because places of worship are designed to be open to encourage people to come. Yet Angkor Wat is a fortress with a moat, multiple protective layers. This place was supposedly built by a king who seized the throne at 14 years old by killing his uncle for the crown. And as the story goes, after killing his uncle to get the crown for himself, he had Angkor Wat built, which would have served many purposes. Number one, it was his personal house. What I think might be the largest personal house to ever exist on Earth. His personal dwelling. This is where he housed a 6,000 person army, 3,500 concubines, fathered probably hundreds of children, and he kept his personal treasures safe. This was his fortress in times of war, and it was also his daily house. It was the main fortress of his kingdom and his empire, and since it has stood for nearly 1,000 years, it proves that this young king of Khmer was one of the most powerful and prolific people to ever live on the face of the earth. He and his team of architects and workers were so powerful and prolific that they went on to build over 700 stone structures. And I just want to point out that they didn't do it eating soy patties and quinoa. And if you think that you could get this young, powerful king of Khmer to snip his nutsack and live in the equivalent of a cardboard fucking box for the sake of the environment, he would have you beheaded before you had a chance to say the words climate change. Exhibit G. Caves. Caves might very well be the reason humans started building large stone structures at all. Think about it. If someone is used to living in a cave, no small shack will do. They would want to replicate cave life the best way they knew how. And that's why we have thousands, if not millions, of ancient, mysterious stone structures all over Earth. Cavemen moving out of caves didn't change their need for shelter, and thus humans had to build. But before they knew how to build, and even before they even had the idea to want to build, they lived and they fucked in the safety of caves. Everyone's ancestors used to live in caves. You personally would not be here without the safety and refuge of a huge cave. In fact, caves are natural human shelters that exist on every continent as the safest place for human beings to eat, sleep, and gather. Every day of my life, I am bombarded with racist comments from people who claim that caves are only for white people. Really? And only white people ever lived in caves, they say. And to fall for that logic, you would also have to believe that not only do caves exist in Africa, but that the people there never needed them. Sounds legit. But in the perfectionist vegan Christian mindset, we've always lived in tiny houses, somewhere located right directly in the middle of the Garden of Eden back when we were, always eating plants. And somehow, the reality that we always ate meat and lived together in large dwellings falls to the wayside. The truth is no longer important. Feelings are. We have become so politically correct, too self-sacrificing, too altruistic, and it is not serving the purpose that we want. It is only making us weaker. When you choose to live in a van like Van Girl and eat only plants, you are told that you're saving the world. You're also told that you're saving hundreds of animals every year. Where are those animals that you've saved? And how come no matter how hard you try, the world gets shittier and shittier? And even though your values are trending and veganism and minimalism are on the rise, the world seems to still be getting worse. The environmentalists scream, we need to get rid of plastic straws. We need to ban plastic bags. Well, then everything's banned. And so the places that implement vegan values and environmentalistic values become a living hell. They become basically Nazi Germany. No, the world would not be better if we all lived in plastic shacks eating chemical-ridden impossible burgers. No, the world will not be better if we would all sacrifice our wood-burning stoves for the environment. But the world would be better if instead of spending $1,200 on a pod bed in San Francisco, that people actually had a family, a dynasty like Downton Abbey to return to. Something like Angkor Wat with their own family, a place, a home, where they would be welcome no matter what life throws at them. Angkor Wat is left in ruins. It is not restored to its former beauty, okay? It is falling the fuck apart. And we will never see it restored to its former beauty, because the person who takes it over could rule the world. So instead of it being rebuilt or properly maintained, the walls are crumbling and tree roots are devastating its remains. You can go there with your smartphone and take some selfies, But the money you spend to get into the place doesn't go toward restoring it. It will never be restored. We will only watch it crumble to dust, and we will only hear about big houses like Downton Abbey having to downsize while being taxed literally out of existence. And here's why. Large stone houses on large properties owned by large families are the government's worst enemy. This used to be what is known as an estate. But now, true estates don't really exist, and the word estate just means the accumulation of whatever someone owns at the time of their death, even if they're homeless. People nowadays don't really seem to notice or realize that their problems are 99% because they don't have enough money. Having a family legacy and a large home for everyone serves to keep your family together, and it solves all of the peasant problems that people have because they're constantly broke. People put their kids in daycare and public school because they don't have anywhere else to put them while they go work their own shit jobs. So kids, innocent children, get 40-hour-a-week shit jobs just because their parents have one. When family members get too old to care for themselves, they get thrown into personal care homes and nursing homes. And all of this is done because everyone is too fucking broke to do otherwise. Everyone is too broke to stay home, take care of Great Aunt Susan or Grandma Grantham. People keep getting pregnant and pumping out kid after kid after kid that they don't have time for, and therefore shove into public prison. And why? Because they don't have the capacity to homeschool like the Duggars. They don't have a full-time nursery or schooling program like Downton Abbey. When you have a big family, and you have a big house on a big farm, you have no need for the government. You have no need to ask for assistance for childcare. You ask assistance for schooling. You need nothing of them. You never have to ask for food stamps. You never have to beg them for one fucking thing. Begging the government to do things for you only makes the government grow. Begging the government to do and give more only causes them to exist. In case you haven't noticed, they love it when you beg for more shit, beg for more rights, beg for even more shit. Gives them a reason to be there. If you hate the government, then you should act like it. Stop asking for free shit. You should be mad as hell that people are asking for this kind of free shit. You should be mad as hell that food stamps even exist, that Obama phones even exist, that free housing even exists. You should be mad as hell that your family dynasty was decimated generations ago in order to accomplish that nonsense you see today. In conclusion, we have lost touch with how to live properly, how to love properly, how to eat properly. We are lost in a sea of sadness. And the truth is that the powers that be want us to be separated from our family, living in pods, shacks, or apartments. No family legacy, nothing to return to, no inheritance, no family dynasty, no savings, no protection. I will leave you with these wise words from Violet, the Downton Abbey Dowager Countess.
For years, I've watched governments take control of our lives, and their argument is always the same. Fewer costs, greater efficiency, but the result is the same too. Less control by the people, more control by the state, until the individual's own wishes count for nothing. That is what I consider my duty to resist.
By wielding your unelected power.
See, the point of a so-called great family is to protect our freedoms. That is why the barons made King John sign the Magna Carta.
I do see that your argument was more honourable than I'd appreciated.
But Mama, we're not living in 1215. And the strengths of great families like ours is going, that's just fact.
Your great-grandchildren won't thank you when the state is all-powerful because we didn't fight. When the state is all-powerful because we didn't fight. When the state is all-powerful because we didn't fight.